I'm going to ask you a question, man. And I think you'll know the spirit in which I'm asking it.
Uh-huh.
I know you're not happy the way things went down,
Yes.
but the kind of Teflon skin that you developed,
It's awesome.
are you happy to that aspect of learning kind of what's
Mhm.
important and whose voices are important and what's
Definitely.
important to, is that like,
I
are you
there
happy you learned that lesson?
there is a part of me that I think is, maybe it's like a little bit of a defense mechanism. Maybe it's like I'm trying to spin zone it, but I feel like I've gone through some shit.
You have.
And part of me is A, proud, and B, almost like in a morbid way, like I find it kind of fascinating that I've gone through some of the best that life has to offer now, like Barstool blowing up, and I have my own show. And one time we're on the billboard at the NASDAQ, things that people like would never ever achieve. I'm like, wow, I got to do that. But I also went through some shit in life that, a lot of people don't have to go through that horror. And I'm like, wow, I have lived life like already. And I've gone through some things that a lot of people could never even imagine going through. And part of me is like, when it's all said and done, good or bad, I'm going to be able to say, like, I went through the fire. I went up, I went down, I went left, I went right. I did it all. And I now, like, I inherently, I don't even think about it, but I just know so much more about myself and life and like who I'm going to listen to, who I'm not going to listen to, what I put up with, what I don't put up with, what's good, and I'm still learning a lot of it. Like, I'm doing therapy now where I'm like, oh, I used to think I knew what I was talking about. Now I don't. I think
Yeah.
the biggest thing for me is learning that, like, it's a little bit scary when you can't trust your own gut. I used to be
Yeah.
pretty sure that I had the right, like, moral compass and the right constitution and the intelligence that whatever decision I made was probably, right. And now I'm like, I got that wrong and I got this wrong. And like,
Yeah.
and then, now I'm learning, like, well, is my gut pointing me in the right direction on this one? Maybe not. Maybe this is. So it's a little bit like harrowing when you have to be like, you don't know everything. You don't know. And as a matter of fact, you tend to maybe go the wrong direction.
But
But I am, and then it trickles down to, like, I don't give a fuck what I used to be upset if a hater didn't think I was funny. And now I'm
no, dude.
like, oh, I don't, your opinion about my jokes is the furthest thing from
But
what
by
I
the way,
care, you know?
that is good. Like to be able
Mhm.
to leave that worry off your head. But you know what else I think is really important to learn is you grow up with this really distinct view of right and wrong, good versus evil, right? And
Mhm.
then you realize as you get older and you make decisions that you know aren't the best, that everybody is a different shade of gray. That doesn't
Absolutely. Life is gray,
Life
brother.
is gray, man. You
Yes.
know you're a good person, right?
Mhm.
You know who you are, but
Mhm.
you also know that you made a choice that other people judged who you were because of this one choice you made. And I'm
Yup.
sure that has changed the way you judge people in turn, right?
Billion percent. There were
Yeah.
guys and people immediately that I was like, oh, you know, because I know my full story, and I know there are times where I'm like, fuck everybody. I'm like justified in what I did. And then there are times where
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you're never justified in that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, shut the fuck up. But it depends on the mood I'm in that day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what I'm thinking about, what I'm going through, what I'm applying it to. But there are definitely things now where I'm like, oh, I would have absolutely crushed that person in the past, or I did crush that person. And then I became that person, and I realized, there are some mitigating circumstances. There are some shades of gray. And yeah, I mean, and I really think it sucks because it kind of goes back to what I was saying about teaching yourself to, in the moment, recognize, what you have and all that. I think until you go through some real shit,
Yeah.
you don't have that perspective. I talked to some of the people at Barstool who are still at the level where they do get affected by someone being like, that podcast wasn't funny, or I don't think you look good, or whatever. And I'm like, bro, when they start to talk shit about you for real and say some things about you and your family that are actually hurtful, that other shit won't even register on the Richter scale.
Not
But I
even.
also can't expect you to ever know that until, I hope you never have to go through that. But, you got to realize that what's going on right now is just not important. You can't tell people
Yeah.
you can't tell the high school senior, don't worry about midterms, dude. They don't matter in the grand scheme of life. Because in that moment, that test is the most important thing that's happening to them.
100%, man.
How can you convey that without, and get them to understand that? You can't really. That's why you got to just like live your life and go through it.
Yeah, dude, there's no doubt about it. You even watch dudes like Logan Paul. Watching his transformation, even at such a young age, like he's a fucking adult now.
I mean, you give me that age, that money, there's no chance I like. He's if I went through that struggle, I would have been like, fuck you guys. I'm just gonna hang out in my mansion. I'm gonna go back to the forest and I'm gonna see more suicides and fuck and he did it like so mature, so smart. He's making more money and more, he's more well-spoken and thoughtful. I'm like, that guy, I could not buy enough stock in Logan Paul. I mean, he is.
If you had asked me 5 years ago, I'd have been like, fuck that.
I did. Dude. 5 years ago, I did say, oh, Jake Paul.
I follow him. But I follow him on Instagram. I'm like, this kid gets it. He fucking gets it now. Like, yeah, I agree.
Because he went through some shit. I wonder, had he not, if he would have just continued to be like fucking chicks and being a loudmouth and making money, because there's no reason to ever change. Right. But he had that reason. And he did like make the change. I also hate even saying this though, because I do hate when people say to me like, oh, like you've learned your lesson. Like you did something that like you really regret. You made a horrible choice. And I'm like, okay, relax. Like, I can say that. You not knowing you can't say that. But I hate even saying that to people like, and look how much better of a person they are. It's like, I don't think I'm a better person. I think I'm a more experienced person, but
that's all
you don't get to say that, fuck off.
I'm the same person. I just know how to hide shit better than I did before.
Amen, brother. Amen.
To keep up with the latest and best content from the Kevin Clancy Show, as well as the simplest and most entertaining breakdowns of what's going on the internet today, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. I know you've heard that a million times, but just do it. It makes my life so much easier. Just click the button, hit the icon, and let me go on my way.